For those in the upper reaches of the hive, the unfortunates of the underhive are all the same, and everywhere below the nexus is an equally dismal ruin of despair and chaos. The truth, as always, is more complex. Beyond the settlements like Dust Falls, Two Tunnels or Sump City are the bad zones. These are areas of underhive wilderness where travellers do well not to tarry. But they are not the most desperate places in the underhive by a good measure, for beyond the bad zones, in those places where civilization has truly abandoned humanity, can be found the Outlands. G'day folks, and welcome back to Wellywood Wargaming. My name is Damon, and in this episode we'll be discussing the Outlander Campaign in its entirety. The rules for the Outlander Campaign can be found in the Book of the Outcast, which I think is one of the best Necromunda supplements to date. You've got full rules for Outcast gangs, as well as all the weird power tables in there as well. Fantastic book, so go get it if you haven't already. It is an absolute scorcher here in Sydney, and I'm stuck inside doing this today when I should probably be at the beach, but I just love it too much. So please do like, share, subscribe, and check out the Patreon as well if you'd like to support me further. So in the Outlander Campaign, players must try to create a functioning settlement from the ruins they find themselves in, attracting new settlers and green hivers, while at the same time denying resources to their rivals. As the campaign progresses, the gangs lay their stake to these remote reaches of the Underhive, and the area reaches a tipping point. Either it will take its place among the power structures of the towns and settlements of the Hive, or be wiped from existence beneath the boot of Lord, or should I say Lady Helmore. Now, I have done videos on a lot of the other campaign systems in Necromunda. We started with the Dominion campaign. I've then done a video on Underhells, Uprising, as well as my own how to create your own custom campaign as well. So go check those out if you haven't already. I do think that this one, the Outlander campaign, is probably not the best starting point for beginners to Necromunda, so please do go and check out the Dominion campaign, because I think that's probably the best starting point, or I would recommend it as the best starting point when getting into Necromunda campaigns. The Outlander campaign is a little bit different in a number of ways, but still sort of utilizes some of the main sort of core mechanics that you get in the other campaign systems as well. Like every other campaign system in Necromunda, really you do need an arbitrator. The arbitrator's job is to basically organize and create the sort of plan for the campaign, whether that is adding or taking away certain elements of the campaign to sort of tailor it to your players' needs. But really, essentially, the main job for the arbitrator is just keeping everybody happy and making sure that all the players are enjoying themselves. Another job for the arbitrator is to decide the start and end dates, as well as downtime and things like that, and just really communicating with your players to make sure that everybody's having a good time. There is a little note here in the rulebook that says Outlaw and Outcast gangs are especially appropriate for Outlander campaigns, but they are not necessary. But it's just kind of like means that this campaign system really is sort of like designed for those outcasts that you actually get in the book. I highly recommend playing Outcast gangs because they are so customizable and absolutely my favorite way to play Necromunda. So the central mechanic in the Outlander campaign compared to, say, the Dominion campaign, which is all about, gaining territories and taking over territories and whatnot, this is all about the building of settlements and the sort of upkeep that comes with that as well. At the start of the campaign, all of the players in that campaign will start off with a piece of turf and some raw materials to get their settlement started. As the campaign progresses, the gang can develop its settlement and gain raw materials from doing different scenarios and rewards in that campaign. These materials can range from raw promethium, plasteel, or even luminous fungi. So the Outlander campaign is a little bit longer than the Dominion campaign typically, because it does require a little bit more time, I suppose, to gather all of the resources to build your settlement in this campaign. The Outlander campaign is divided into 6 campaign cycles, separated by one single period of downtime. We're going to go into those in a bit more detail soon. Each gang has a starting budget of 1,000 credits, which is pretty typical in most Necromunda campaigns. Of course, if you're an arbitrator, you can up this or decrease this if you like, but I think the recommended starting point here is 1,000 credits to build your gang list. Starting your settlement. So during the Outlander campaign, each gang will have its own settlement that it must grow and protect. At the start of the campaign, these settlements are little more than bad zone camps, scraping out an existence away from the more populous regions of the Underhive. But with the right materials and time, they can become burgeoning hubs of trade and civilization in an otherwise lawless wilderness. Each player will need a settlement roster, or a blank piece of paper to keep track of their settlement. This is done in much the same way as players keeping track of their gangs, recording materials gathered and structures built. The settlement roster sheet also lets the players know what benefits their settlement is providing them from one cycle to the next. The greater their settlement, the greater the yield from its structures. The very first thing a player must do when starting their settlement is choose where it will be. This will inform to an extent the materials it generates as well as any defences it should have if the settlement comes under attack. In general, the more desolate the starting location of a settlement, the easier it will be to defend, though the poorer its materials will be. Unless the arbitrator decides otherwise, players should be allowed to choose where they wish to build their settlement, as this forces them to carefully consider the kind of settlement they wish to grow. Now, there are 5 different types of sites that you can start building your settlement on. So you've got to choose from one of these 5, and it's pretty give or take really whether you want to sacrifice defense in place for resources or go for something that's really, really easy to defend and doesn't yield too much resources. So we've got the Factorum Runoff, the first one, which has defense 3, resources 6, and toxicity 3. So much more in the form of resources, not much in the form of defense there. We then have the Boneyard, which is defense 4, resources 4, and toxicity 4, so the most average one across the board there. We have the Ghost Town, which is defense 2, resources 5, and toxicity 5. We have the Depths, which is defense 6, resources 3, and toxicity 3, and we have the Edge of the Hive as well, just outside the hive wall. This is defense 5, resources 5, and toxicity 2. So quite varied there, but I think really go with the one that your heart says you should go with and is in keeping with the fluff and narrative of your gang as well. Players from back in N95 will probably remember these 2 here, but every settlement starts with 2 structures. The first is an isotropic fuel rod, remember that? And also a water still as well. And you get those for free, though additional ones can be purchased at the cost listed later on in this campaign document. These are both supply structures and provide the settlement with materials. At the start of the campaign, players will receive these materials and may spend them to create new structures before their first battle. All other structures must be built by harvesting materials during battles. During each post-battle sequence, gangs can expand their settlements provided they have the materials to do so. After the receive rewards step of the post-battle sequence, players may select a new structure for the settlement provided they have the materials to pay for it and meet any other requirements it may have, such as the settlement already having other structures of certain hangers-on being part of the player's gang. The player simply pays the material cost for the structure, removing the materials from their settlement roster sheet and adds it to their settlement. There's no limit to the number of structures that can be added to a settlement during a single post-battle sequence, provided the requirements are met. Structures can also be added systematically, so in the same post-battle sequence, a player may build their structures in any order to ensure they meet the requirements needed. The location of the settlement also limits its structures, so for instance, a settlement built in the depths will never be able to match the number of productivity of supply structures in one built near a Factorum Runoff, though equally, the one in the depths will boast better defences. When expanding a settlement, players have the following limits depending on their location. So a settlement may not have more defence structures than its defence rating, may not have more building structures than its toxicity rating, and may not have more supply structures than its resource rating. I think Papa Nurgle might be coming because there are flies buzzing everywhere while I do this recording, which is really annoying. I hope it doesn't get picked up on the microphone. Either that or it's just the typical Australian summer. Anyway, the size of these guys, they're huge. And each campaign phase is broken down as follows. The development phase, the first one, which is 3 campaign weeks here. The first part of the Outlander campaign follows the burgeoning outland settlements as their gangs scour the wastes for materials. At the beginning of each week, gangs receive the benefits from their settlements. All scenarios that have materials as game rewards, i.e. the mining expedition, the gunk tank or big score, provide twice the normal amount. Gangs cannot raid each other's settlements in this phase either. Quite important to remember that, and very, very similar to the Dominion campaign, where in the first part of the first phase, you're basically going out and taking the territories, and in the last phase, you're taking them off other gangs. We then have downtime, and this is exactly the same as every other downtime so far mentioned in all of the other campaign systems we've gone through here. Fighters recover, captives are returned, experienced juves and prospects are promoted, fresh recruitment happens, and we have settlement maintenance on the end there as well. The settlement maintenance thing is the only differing part of this downtime here, and it is as follows. Gangs can scrap up to 3 settlement structures, removing them and their benefits from the settlement roster sheet, gaining half the materials used to build them back, and then immediately build 3 new structures provided they meet their requirements. Note that a gang cannot scrap a structure that is prerequisite for another structure they own. So that's really important to note there. You can also play side battles here as well, and these again are just the same as your Law and Misrule or Dominion campaigns. Side battles mean that you don't get any campaign rewards, so no structures, no resources here, just purely XP and or injuries. The The third phase is the expansion phase, and this is 3 campaign weeks or cycles. The third phase of the Outlander campaign sees settlements going to war with each other, while also charting the benefits of now fully functioning Underhive outposts. During this phase, the following rules apply. At the beginning of each week, gangs gain benefits from their settlements. Gangs can now raid each other's settlements and may choose the settlement raid, market mayhem, or stealth attack scenarios here as well. How to determine scenarios in this. There are a bunch of scenarios that are linked to the Outlander campaign in the back of the book, and they're pretty good. They're all really good. I've played them all, and I actually include them in many of my own custom campaigns as well, because I feel like a lot of these are quite even. They're quite well balanced as opposed to some of the other scenarios. And the sort of determined scenario table is as follows. That's 2d6 here. On a 2 to 3, the player with the greater number of structures gets to choose which scenario to play. On a 4 to 5, we get gunk, tank, or settlement raid, both of which are great. On a 6 to 7, we have Mining Expedition and Market Mayhem. I particularly love Market Mayhem. In fact, they're all good. Mining Expedition is great too. 8 to 9, we get the Big Score and Stealth Attack. And on a 10 to 12, the player with the least amount of structures gets to choose the scenario played. Post-battle is the same as every other campaign so far as well, except here we receive the rewards and build structures with those rewards, especially if they are resources from those scenarios too. The way that you win the Outlander campaign, it has many different sort of forms of winning, I suppose. They like to do this, Games Workshop. They like to make lots and lots of winners. There's never just one winner, and it is as follows. Lord of the Bad Zones is the person who has the most structures. So if you have the most structures, you will win that title. The Outland Raider, the player's gang who's won the most settlement raid, stealth attack, and market mayhem scenarios, is the attacker. We then have the Outland Defender, the player's gang who's won the most settlement raid, stealth attack, market mayhem scenarios, as the defender. We have the Scavenger, the player's gang who's won the most gunk, tank, mining expedition, or big score scenarios, and the Master of Coin, the player's gang with the highest wealth. Note, there is nothing for most kills, nothing for most rep, or anything similar to that. So it's really based on, you know, how many structures you have or just how good an attacker or defender you are in this one. So it's a little bit different there, and I quite like it. All of the structures in the Outlander campaign have 3 components. They have a building type. This tells you the name of the structure and what kind of structure it is, i.e. supply, building, or defense. We also have its benefits. These detail the benefits a gang gets from the structure. Any materials are gained at the start of each campaign week and downtime, and all other benefits are always considered active. And then you have the build cost, or the requirements to actually build that structure as well. This tells you the cost to build the structure in materials, which must be paid for the structure to be added to the gang settlement roster sheet, and any additional conditions that must be met in order to build the structure. These can either be structures that may be present in the settlement, or hangers-on that must be attached to the gang. If at any point a settlement no longer meets the requirements, they must either build or hire the missing requirements or delete the structure from their roster. So talking about the different types of materials in the Outlander campaign to build your structures, there are 3 types. We have power, sustenance, and salvage. Those are pretty obvious to work out here. And you have supply structures, building structures, and defense structures within there as well. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but there are different types of structures in those 3 categories. Let's just pick 2 from each. The isotropic fuel rod here gives you 10 units of power in exchange for 15 sustenance. The scrap mine, for example, gives you plus 10 units of salvage, and it costs, or the requirements for this are 10 power and 5 sustenance. In terms of the building structures here, we have the dock clinic, which is pretty cool. In the post-game sequence, remove up to 3 fighters from recovery. That's pretty powerful, and the requirements for this one is 20 power, 10 sustenance, and 10 salvage there as well. So it's expensive to run that one. We then have the jail as well, so plus 3 to the dice roll to capture enemy fighters. Pretty fun, that one, and that one costs you 5 power and 5 salvage. In terms of the defense structures here, we have the watchtower. Defender may place a watchtower in their deployment zone. This costs you 20 salvage, and we also have critters here as well. The attacker is subject to the horrors in the dark special rule. I really like that one. Costs you 30 sustenance and 10 salvage. So in summary, the sort of core mechanics for this are pretty similar to something like your Dominion campaign, except it does involve a little bit more upkeep and a little bit of pen and paper, to be honest, which is the way that Necromunda used to be. It all used to be pen and paper back in 95. I would say, though, that the complexity of this one, it is a little bit more complex than, say, the Dominion or Law and Misrule campaign, as you probably gathered. There's lots of terminology that you kind of have to get familiar with before you get really comfortable with the building of structures and whatnot, but it is is definitely one of the better campaign systems there. I just think it gives you a really nice sort of narrative, fluffy sort of engagement with the campaign. Just building your own settlement and choosing the types of structures that you can build is really, really cool. Destroying your structures and rebuilding and reestablishing those resources in other ways is really nice as well. I think it's a really good campaign, but definitely, like I said, not one for beginners, just in terms of the amount of stuff you have to keep track of, not least the arbitrator also having to keep track of everything as well. It is a little bit of a complex one, but I think ultimately very rewarding once you get your head around it. Really, that's all I'm going to talk about with the Outlander campaign today, though. And again, you can find the full rules for this in the Book of the Outcast, which is an excellent book, so do go get it if you haven't got it already. There is also a roster sheet, a settlement roster sheet in there as well that you could maybe scan and print out. This has the structures, the types, and the benefits on it, so you can actually have them in front of you for every game as well, just for ease of use. Anyway, that's it for now for the Outlander campaign. I'll be back with another campaign video real soon. Peace out.